I think that if you want to use AI well for writing, you have to understand what good writing is like at a basic level. So you have to understand things like clear structure, using active voice, formatting and organizing your ideas. And also for learning and for anything where you're trying to change a behavior or impart knowledge, context. Like, here's why you should care. Here's what you'll get out of it. Here's what you'll be able to do. Because then that gives people a reason to keep reading, I think.
Welcome to Talk Learning with me. I'm Joseph Diaz, an instructional designer passionate about connecting with others and exploring the field of learning and development. In this podcast, we dive into topics like education, learning science, facilitation, behavior change, and other skills related to personal and professional growth. If you're looking to connect with other lifelong learners and discover new insights from talented learning professionals, this show is for you. Today's episode is all about writing, AI, and how to combine the two in a way that amplifies instead of replacing your skills. I'm joined by Matt Thomas, a technical writer and content creator who has spent thousands of hours learning to use AI tools like ChatGPT to streamline his work, enhance clarity, and stay sharp in his field. We discuss what makes good writing, the importance of maintaining your own critical thinking, and how instructional designers can leverage AI without outsourcing their brains. Whether you're new to using AI or looking to level up your approach, Matt brings a ton of real-world insights and practical tips. On that note, let's talk writing in AI. What's up, Matt? Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, Joseph. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I've checked out a couple episodes of it already, so happy to be a guest.
Yeah, I've loved the conversations that we've had virtually over LinkedIn, some of the chats we've had in the past, and really excited to have you on the podcast and talk more about your expertise in writing, using AI. I've learned so much from you, and it's helped me a ton in the work that I do every single day. And so before we get into things, I want to give you a second to just share a little bit about what piqued your interest in generative AI and how you started incorporating it into your work in writing. Right now I feel like AI is just all over the place. It's impossible to not hear about it. So what was the start for you?
So two things really. One was fear because as soon as ChatGPT came out I remember trying it at the end of like December 2022. And I was just like, wow, like it was like magic at the time, right? Like it's funny how much we take it for granted already, but yeah. And then my next thought was, I better learn to use this before it replaces me. And that was kind of like what started. And then two things. So that, and then also like that was the end of 2022 when ChatGPT came out. And then 2023, I was pretty active on LinkedIn. Like I was posting super consistently that year, and creating content regularly. So obviously, like, having being able to like make that process more efficient and increase my productivity and stuff like that with the help of AI was super useful. And I just ended up using it a ton that year. And then like really in the last year, half year, I'd say is when I've started using it a lot more for like professional stuff and like even in my job every day.
Yeah, that's quite the transformation going from holy cow, this is terrifying. This might take my job to, okay, this is interesting. This is kind of magical. I'm going to play with it to it becoming an integral part of the work that you do every single day. So that initial reaction was that it's magical. Would you say that it still has that magical sense to you even today, or has that changed?
That's a good question. I wouldn't say magical to me anymore because I've used it so much. I understand how it works, and like as I spend all day, I feel like talking to it. That's actually another thing is I don't type. I like actually use the voice control for ChatGPT extension and talk to it, and that I think is also part of using it well. You know what the thing is about it is that it's cool because you don't always know what it's going to tell you, and sometimes it will surprise you or it will give you like ideas or a perspective or just help you amplify an existing idea in ways that I'm just like, yeah, you know what I mean? That's super useful. And it does surprise me still. Maybe it's not magic anymore, but I think that's what I like about it is that it's not like it's not a static thing, right? A lot of it really depends on how good you get at using with it.
Yeah, I like that description that the magic is maybe different because we understand it better, but it's still surprising of Wow, I didn't expect that output. That was actually more helpful or more insightful than I thought it was going to be. So, really, really cool. And you have a really extensive background working in technical writing where you've been really implementing generative AI the most. And so, I'm just curious, could you share a little bit about your journey across industries or roles that have maybe shaped your approach to technical writing and how that has affected your use of AI?
Sure. I'll start with the first part, so I'll just give you a bit about my background. So my background is as a technical writer. I've done copywriting as well, but I would say like I'm more of a technical writer because that's really my background, but an editor, technical editor as well. And then in the last few years, content creation. Like the last few years, I kind of became a creator on LinkedIn, which is how we met. And from there it's and then which I think was good because I think like up to that point I think I was mostly just a technical writer. Now I think after having written for like an online audience and done more copywriting and like understanding marketing and stuff better, I'm a better overall writer. But anyway, and in terms of the second part, how I use it every day, it's the writing part, yes, but for me it's also the ability to synthesize and like cross reference large amounts of information. So like I'll give you an example from literally today. I was I'm putting together a manual to get one of our products. I'll tell you about my company in a second, but to get one of our products certified by CSA, Canadian Standards Association, which is like the kind of the product governing body here for electronic and gas sensing devices.
Hmm.
So I had on short notice, I had to put together the SME sent me a big spreadsheet of all the different requirements from CSA that we needed to include in this manual, and it only needed to be for the two parts of it that we needed to certify, so not the entire device. So most of that content was coming from a few different other manuals that already exist in different sections, and then checking against the spreadsheet. So I basically fed them all to ChatGPT, and I was like, I want you to like pull out anything from this and this, but like reference where it came from and then map it to like this on the spreadsheet and then map that to the outline that I created for the guide. So you know what I mean? Just that ability to like do that like that grunt work and just I find that it amplifies your productivity a lot. It's not a replacement. I think if when well used well, it amplifies your existing skills and boosts your productivity. At least that's how I
Yeah.
use it at work.
For sure. And something that you and I have both talked about that you just kind of touched on is when you get that massive content dump from subject matter experts that say,
Yes.
here's a massive PowerPoint or a 90-page PDF, and I promise you every single word, every page of this is important and nothing can be left out. And you can kind
Yeah.
of pass that on to an AI and say, help me extract what are some actual key points from this. And can you summarize it? Tell me where you got it from. I think that's
Hmm.
a really, really awesome use case, like you said, to do some of that initial grunt work. And then we can go in and double check and see, is that actually accurate? Did it really pull that from page 67? Is that really
Yeah.
what the intent
And
was?
that's the
Check the
thing, you gotta
context.
check it. Like that's why I'm like reference your stuff and then give me page numbers and section titles in the source documents because I want to make sure that like I got to make sure that it's right because that's the thing about using AI well too is like it's a tool and you can't outsource your brain to it. If anything, you have to think more critically when you're using it because you have to think about what you're doing and why and how to structure it in a way and break down tasks in a way that like which I think is also my background as a technical writer lends itself really well to that because it's like organizing information logically, organizing things into tasks, procedures, etc., etc. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you know about that too, right? Like,
Yeah, and I love that you said you can't outsource critical thinking to AI because I even saw that today that I was trying to organize a program, get some feedback, and I said, "Help me look for trends in this data." And as I was double checking everything, I realized that it had given me a 3-week trend, but week 1 was 5 days long, week 2 was 8 days long, and week 3 was
so
6
it just
days
made
long,
it
but
up.
included a day of overlap in data from week 2. And so if I had outsourced that critical thinking
Yeah,
and just said,
good for
wow,
you for
thank you for
checking it,
doing the
right?
report, yeah,
Yeah,
I would have had a messy, messy output.
and that's the thing. Like, especially like if you're going to use it for work, you can't out like you can outsource the grunt parts of it. Um, and I outsource some of the writing now. Like, I don't. but I mean, like when I do that, it's section by section. I'm always like editing it and refining it. And it's also like I gave it examples of existing. It's also looking at a bunch of examples so it knows kind of how to write it. But yeah, you absolutely. I've had times when at the end of last year, I had a contract as like a technical editor for this technical training company that develops like training material for power engineers, and it was like a study guide for them, and it was like heavy math and physics. Like I don't understand any of that stuff. I'm not a math person in the least bits, but like when I fed like the existing content to improve it to like the custom GPT I built, it knew how to structure stuff, but also sometimes it just made up stuff. It like hallucinated stuff so convincingly that I was like, it was only as I was checking, I was like, hey, wait a minute, where did this come from? And it would insist it was right until, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
yeah,
And that's where, yeah, sometimes a chat GPT can kind of be a subject matter expert, but not to the full extent of actually working with that subject matter expert. And then you mentioned that in addition to kind of condensing and distilling information, you sometimes have ChatGPT do some of the writing for you, which was initially your fear was, is ChatGPT, is AI going to take away my job as a technical writer? So I'm curious, for you, at the heart of being a technical writer, what is it that you get to do that AI is helping you amplify or do better?
everything, honestly, like everything from, so there's some things like I have a process that I tend to follow. Like I tend to start, and this also influences it, like kind of maybe how I use it. Like I tend to start with an outline that I write myself because I want to have the first crack at it, and then I'll go back and forth. Like I use it a lot as a second opinion and just like bouncing ideas off of, whether that's how to like organize this section or how to like break this topic up into subtopics in a way that's like logical. So yeah, like all those things I think is it's helpful.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so you kind of mentioned creating frameworks or structures that help you maybe take the initial crack at it yourself and then use AI. And not only have you kind of come up with your own frameworks, but you actually went ahead and wrote an entire guide and almost an instruction manual for ChatGPT called Writing for Robots. So I'm curious, with all of the experimenting that you were doing with using AI and playing with it in your work, what was it that led you to create Writing for Robots, to actually go ahead and say, I want to make an instruction manual for how to use ChatGPT?
Funny, it started initially as just like a prompting guide, and I kind of realized late in at the end of 2023, I was just like I kind of realized after a year of you pretty much using ChatGPT that I took a course of a friend actually through LinkedIn, and it on his like ChatGPT course, and it kind of just changed the way I looked at it and approached it like drastically. Just went from like kind of using it to just like produce stuff. The way I thought about it as just like a way to like just produce content versus like a collaborative like partner that like you kind of go back and forth with. So it was actually just kind of an idea I had that like one day I was just thinking about like I had the idea for an analogy on like prompting, and then I started thinking about it more, and then the more I thought started thinking about it, I started it the scope of it kind of grew from just like a quick and dirty prompting guide with a few example like with some sample prompts to like more like I think my technical writing background came through, and I was just like, we have to kind of. I'm gonna teach people. My goal with it was to not teach people just like, hey, here's how you write prompts, or here's how you prompt. It's like, hey, here's how you should think about how you interact with it, because it's not like any other piece of software we've ever used, right? Because like everything, all the other software we've used throughout our lives up to this point, like you input something, it responds in a fairly predictable way. Maybe there's some variation, but it's like a narrow range of parameters. But with AI, so much like it can respond so many different ways, and so much of the output you get is dependent on your input. So I think that was really my goal, was to like have people walk away with, here's how to think about it at a conceptual level so you can apply it to all your interactions, versus just like here's how to like structure your prompts or like organize whatever. Yeah, I think that was the real impetus for it. And then yeah, the more I thought, I got really excited about it, and the more I thought about it, and I just started building it out and writing the outline. My final outline was like 12 pages and 2,000 words, so it was pretty detailed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool that that scope creep ended up turning from a short prompting guide into a full on manual. And I think that consistency thing is a really cool analogy for me, because I think about if I'm going to take a course on how to maybe create something like a graphic in Photoshop, it's pretty consistent as far as if you use this tool in Photoshop, you get this end result. Or if I'm building a course in Rise 360, if you use this block, you're going to get this result. Or if you use this type of interactive, this is what the learner is going to experience. But with a language model and you're putting in a prompt, you might get a somewhat consistent output, but that could even change based on
Hmm.
what version of the model you're running on from 6 months ago to today, versus if you switch to a completely different AI model, like you're going from ChatGPT to Google Gemini to something else, like you're going to get a different output. So I think that's a really great point that you make, is people need to understand that nuance and see that this isn't just something you can master with 10 amazing prompts. They're going to fix all of your
Yeah.
problems.
Yeah, it's a skill. Like prompting is a skill, I think, right? Like anything, like it's a skill and it takes time to develop. And then like honestly, I think that like having that technical writing background. And the other thing about it too is like I kind of it was a cool opportunity to build something where I kind of got to cater to kind of two audiences with one product because like the first four sections of it are like kind of like conceptual, like fundamentals to like more advanced, progressively more advanced concepts that build on those core concepts as a foundation. But then the section five of it is just straight up like all action, no theory is what I called it because you don't need it's a bunch of quick wins for people who just like want to dive in. Like here's like 50 plus prompting strategies and like examples with over 100 examples that you can just like dive in and use immediately without reading any of the rest of this. If you read the rest of it, you'll understand why they're like why it's structured this way, but you don't have to, right? And then I think you can
Mhm.
kind of like hit both learning styles. So
Yeah, and it makes me think of an episode I did previously about accessibility with Dr. Nicole Latoile, where she talked about how
I'll
different
listen to that
people are
one.
gonna, yeah, different people get content in different ways, and so maybe some people are going to be like visually going through and reading content. Other people might listen to something. They might be working with a screen reader, and so when we're trying to design a universal learning experience that's accessible to everybody, I think that's a great point that you can't just say, I wrote a one-page manual and this is the end all be all of how to use ChatGPT or how to use AI to be effective. And so I think that's really cool that you took that into consideration of what are the preferences of my learners. Do they want to just get hands-on and jump straight into the chatbot and play with it? Or do they want to take some time first to read? Do they want to go look into other resources and learn about it that way? And you're able to cater and tailor to those different needs.
Yeah. Also, I'm not arrogant enough to assume that people want to read like, I don't know, 7,000 words of like my writing before they get to like the actionable stuff, right? It's like that's why it's kind of structured. Even that section is structured in a way you could just like jump around, whereas all the other ones are kind of structured in a like a linear fashion. But
Yeah, for sure. That choose your own adventure kind of lets people
exactly.
get the learning experience that they're looking for, whether that's I want the quick wins out the gates. Let me just open up AI, jump into Chat GPT and prompt it, or do I want to take a second to slow down and read and get a better thought process behind how is this machine or how is this software working before I start using it and playing with
Yeah,
it?
and how I think about interacting with it, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And just thinking about that, I'm curious. There are all kinds of mistakes that people make when they first start using AI. And I was just curious, what are some of the biggest, most common pitfalls that you see when people first start using AI to enhance their writing or as a partner, or sometimes even a replacement?
a couple things. Like if we're talking about using it in general, I think treating it like a vending machine, like you just put like input in and then you just like want something to come out, right? You're not really thinking about how to explain to like how you're not really structuring your input in a way that's going to get you the results that you want. With writing specifically, this is something else I was gonna talk about as well, but I think that like if you want to use AI well for writing, you have to understand what good writing is like at a basic level. So you have to understand like things like clear structure, using active voice, like formatting and organizing your ideas. And also for learning and for like and anything that's like where you're trying to change a behavior or impart knowledge, context. Like here's why you should care. here's what you'll get out of it, here's what you'll be able to do, because then that gives people a reason to keep reading, I think, or keep learning, or keep doing the training, or you know what I mean, like.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's super key because you almost read my mind of the next question that I wanted to ask you was when someone is trying to use AI for instructional design, whether that be to create a course outline or a script for a training video, how can we avoid those common pitfalls? And so you mentioned that context is maybe one of those most crucial elements. Is that right?
Yeah, both context for when you're prompting the model, and also context that you give your learner or reader, right? One of the main things is that you have to like start the process yourself, because I find that I always get the best results from AI, like using it for work or amplifying what I'm doing, if a write the first draft, or at the very least write the outline, or like figure out, sit there and think about it first, like what is the learner or the reader, what do they need to know, what do they like in this section, what are the outcomes or behaviors or like whatever, right? So I think like, and once you've thought about that, it's much easier to give that detailed feedback to AI, and then to expand. I would say start writing by writing your. I mean, to me, I'm somebody who always starts. I mean, even if it's an email, sometimes I'll write like a quick outline of just like key points. But I always start by writing my own outline, and then I will feed it to AI, and I'll have it. I'll ask it, what do you think? I'll ask it, is this organized logically? Does this make sense here? Does this make sense here? Because there are plenty of times it will like suggest a structure, or like try and build on something I've already kind of outlined, and then I will look at it and be like, no, it doesn't make sense. Like this should come first before this, and be like, you know what I mean? Like again, I think it comes back to not outsourcing your brain. And I think that's why like you need to have a skill set in whatever it is you do, right? And apply that critically to using AI.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think I've even seen that in business communication when I'm trying to maybe coordinate with a SME, that if I were to just tell ChatGPT, hey, reach out to this SME about this question or this problem, it's going to be all over the place. But like you said, if I take the time, and when I've taken the time to write that first draft and put down my thoughts onto paper and then give it to AI and say, can you make sure this is clear? Can you make sure that the formatting is easy to skim so that when the subject matter expert only takes 30 seconds to look at my email, they know why it matters
Yeah,
and I get their attention? That's where AI really comes in and amplifies my work. It's not going to communicate with SMEs and handle that relationship for me, but it is going to help me take my
yeah,
current skills and
exactly.
maybe improve them and enhance that communication I'm having with my subject matter experts.
Or like, yeah, totally. And like even with this one, I was like, when I was working on this manual, I was like check the spreadsheet. What are the things that we still have questions around that we need to follow up with the SMEs with, right? Like stuff like that. Like, or like, are there any gaps that I haven't addressed?
Yeah, I personally love that question, asking, are there any gaps that that I've missed? Because I've found that oftentimes when I think I have a completed outline for a course in Rise 360 or for an instructor-led training I'm going to do, and then I say, are there any gaps? There's all kinds of potential objections that I might get from learners or from my target audience, and I think, oh man, I'm glad that AI caught that and gave me the objection in advance so I can handle it now instead of getting caught in the heat of the moment and trying to overcome that later on.
Yeah. The flip side of that is that you also have to trust your own like judgment, right? Because like I think that was one trap I fell into when I started using AI. I'd like write a sentence, I'd be like, what do you think of this sentence? And I write a sentence, and like, you know what I mean? And I think I was trying to make it perfect, but I was also like, it's better. Like I do think it's better to get your, that's one of my rules kind of, is like I write the first draft and then I give it to AI. Now, if it's something that's important, sometimes if I'll do it the other way around, but like
Mhm.
typically I'll write the first draft, then I have AI edit and help me improve it, not have AI write the first draft and me improve it, because then it's my ideas kind of, and my thoughts, and just like the way I organize things baked into the initial structure of it. There is definitely something, like I said, I think the best uses of AI come from like strong human ideas that you just, and then you can build on them with AI.
Yeah, and I like that you pointed out too, we can't lose trust in ourselves and just rely so heavily on AI to make everything perfect and better. Sometimes we can maybe we write something and go, that was actually pretty good. I might just use that. Or we refine it and we actually liked our initial draft better than we like the AI output. And there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with that. And I
Or
think
it
that's
gives you a list
important
of
too to keep in
objections, right? And
mind.
you're like, no, that's not really relevant to this audience, or like, no, you're reaching. So that's like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and I think that's like where being an expert and a professional comes in, right? Like you have that skill set, you have to make that judgment. I mean, it depends where you are in your career too, right? Like I think I could definitely see like if I'm new to a field or I didn't have much experience in it, I could definitely see that being a pit, like a potential pitfall is like trusting it too much instead of your own
Yeah.
judgment.
For sure. And when it comes to using AI for creating different instruction manuals like you do in technical writing or creating learning experiences as an instructional designer, with so many different models to use from ChatGPT to Gemini to Cloud, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on using different AI models?
This is one of those things I'm like, I know I should do it more, but like I'm pretty much a Chat GPT exclusive person. I have used other ones, like I've used Perplexity, I've used Gemini a little bit, I've used Claude a little bit. For a long time, it wasn't available in this part of Canada, which is unfortunate because I think I would have started using it sooner. And there's a couple things I don't like about it, like it doesn't have voice control, and I really like I can't go back to just typing when I talk. I just talk to it now, man. It's just so much like more natural, and it
Mm-hmm.
so is that. And then but I have heard my boss was actually just telling me like just like a couple hours ago that she says that like the default tone is definitely better than Chat GPT. But I think at this point I've got mine to like write like enough. I've spent enough hours that it pretty much like writes like me or the examples I feed it. So but yeah, I mean there's definitely a bunch of tools I should be using or I could be using, but I think like yeah, I'm pretty much. I think it's a good thing to use different ones because they do have different like they're structured differently in how they respond. But yeah,
Yeah, I think there are tons of AI tools that we could be using. And at the end of the day, the one that you actually use and that works for your workflow is probably the best place to go. There's no point in forcing yourself to use Perplexity if you've got ChatGPT giving you the outputs that you need and it's actually writing outlines in an effective way for you. Or you don't need to force yourself to switch to ChatGPT if the outputs you're getting with Perplexity are helpful and they're organizing your workflow and helping you be more productive.
yeah. And then some things too, right? Like actually, when I wrote a white paper a few months ago, Perplexity was super useful for just like research and a bunch of references because I needed a bunch of citations kind of in that domain. So yeah, different tools for different applications.
This conversation has just been so insightful for me, just thinking back on what I've seen as far as my own perspective shift over the last couple of years of using AI, your experience using it as a technical writer, how that can help me as an instructional designer use AI to amplify my writing and not necessarily to replace me or my critical thinking or skills. And so for those listening that want to connect with you, Matt, and follow the work that you're doing, the projects that you're working on, and your drum covers on LinkedIn, what's the best place for people to connect with you and find your work?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Matt Thomas, drum emoji. If you want to check out my prompting guide, Writing for Robots, it's www.writing for the number for robots.ai, writing for robots. And if you want to check out my drum covers or subscribe to me on YouTube, I'm on YouTube at MGT81 Music. And
Fantastic.
that's it.
I love it. I'll make sure to link all of that in the description. So, a whole wealth of content people can get from you, whether that be your Writing for Robots prompting guide, they want to just connect with you on LinkedIn, chat about AI or chat about writing, or if it's just to jam out on the drums, YouTube's the perfect place to be. Well, Matt, thank you so much for the time. It's been such a pleasure getting to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Joseph. Big fan of the podcast. Happy to be a guest.
A huge thank you to Matt Thomas for joining me on today's episode and sharing his thoughtful approach to using AI as a writing partner. From his early experiments with generative tools to creating his own guide, Writing for Robots, Matt shows us how AI can help us elevate our communication without giving up our own human voice. We covered a lot, from organizing your thoughts before prompting, what it takes to write well with AI, and why critical thinking is more important than ever. If you want to learn more from Matt, be sure to connect with him on LinkedIn, check out his guide, Writing for Robots.ai, and be sure to enjoy his drum covers over on YouTube at MGT81 Music. Subscribe to Talk Learning with me for more conversations like this. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share this episode with your network. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll talk soon.